My fellow citizens, I don't know if my accusers have affected you or not. They spoke so convincingly, they almost made me forget who I am. Despite the fact that there's no truth in what they said. What impressed me the most, though, of all their lies, was when they said, "You should be careful I don't deceive you, because, supposedly, I'm such a skillful speaker." I thought it was shameful to have the nerve to tell you that, just as I'm about to contradict them by proving to you I'm anything but a skillful speaker. Unless, of course, by skillful speaker, they mean one that speaks the truth. Because I'll tell you, from me you'll hear nothing but the truth. And I'm not going to use flowery phrases like that, but whatever expressions come to mind. Because I believe that what I say is just. And don't protest when you hear me defend myself with the same words I use in the marketplace down there by the merchants' tables, where many of you have heard me speak. Because you see, this is the first time I appear in court in all my years. And the language spoken here is foreign to me. So, since if I was indeed a foreigner, you would forgive my manners and the language I was brought up with, I ask of you the same thing in this case. Pay attention to and examine only what I say, not how I say it. This, I believe, is the virtue of a judge, and the virtue of a speaker is to tell the truth. So, members of the jury, I think I should first defend myself against the old slanders that have been leveled against me, and then deal with the more recent ones. As you know, I've had many detractors in the past who came to you with serious accusations against me without saying anything true. I admit, I fear those past accusers more than I fear amateurs over there and his bunch, even though they too are dangerous. Far more dangerous, however, are the ones who spoke to you when you were still young and tried to convince you of things that baseless. Not to mention the fact they did it in my absence, without ever giving me a chance to defend myself. So, members of the jury, let us examine from the beginning the accusations that started this whole campaign of slander against me, and on which accusations Mellitus over there has based his current charges. Yes. Let me remind you, if I may, of the old indictments. Because they were indictments. No, they were never submitted in court. More or less as follows. Socrates is guilty of wrongdoing because he considers himself to be a wise man. Because he investigates with excessive zeal heavenly phenomena and everything that's going on under the earth. Because he makes false arguments sound true. And because he teaches these things to others. Yes, those were more or less the old charges. Yes. You've heard all this after all, haven't you, in the Aristophanes comedy? Some character named Socrates goes around claiming he can walk on air, on the clouds, conjuring up things about which I know nothing. And I'm not saying this to put down the science that deal with such phenomena or to avoid the charges that Milton over there has brought against me. I say this, members of the jury, because I have nothing to do with such matters at all. Heavenly or infernal. And on this I have you as my witnesses, don't I? And I ask those of you who have heard me speak, inform the rest. Testify on my behalf. And realizing that these are the kinds of things that are constantly being said about me. Not one of them, though, is true. And if anyone has ever told you that I instruct people and get paid for it, as Aristophanes claims, that's not true either. Not that there is anything wrong with that. For someone, that is, to be capable of instructing people. Yes, and going from city to city to convince young men to drop their friends and associate only with him, paying him money for the privilege and being grateful to him also. I once met a man who had paid the sophists more money than all the others put together. You know him? Callias? Yes, good. The son of Hipponicus, good. So I asked him, he has two sons, you see. Callias, I said, if instead of your two sons, you had two colts, or two calves, we know very well whom you would trust them with, and whom you would hire, so they grow up the best way possible. Be a horse trainer or a farmer. Now that we're dealing with human beings, his two sons, in whose care will you put them? Who knows best the virtues that are appropriate for a human being and a citizen? Is there anyone suitable? I asked him, yes or no? Of course, he said, Socrates, of course. I said, yeah, yes, who is it? Where's he from? And what's his fee? Oh, he said, you know, it's Ellinikos from Paros. And Socrates, he charges 5 minutes. 500 drachmas. 500 day wages. I thought how blessed Ellinikos must be, if indeed he's master of such technique. He instructs people so well. I would be very proud if I had this kind of ability and expertise. Fact is, though, members of the jury, I don't. I do not teach. Of course, one of you could say to me, well, Socrates, what is it that you do then? How did all these slanders against you come up in the first place? Tell us. So number one, yes, he needs a lot. I think that would be an appropriate person. And I will try to explain to you what it is that has caused both my failure in the slanders and members of the jury. It's very simple. I have gained this reputation simply, purely because of my wisdom. But what exactly is this wisdom of mine? Why, it is nothing else than that which is considered to be natural human wisdom. Well, actually, I believe I may have that. Whereas the ones we spoke about earlier, the sophists, you know, they must possess a wisdom higher than the human one. Otherwise, I don't know what to say. I'm not familiar with that kind of wisdom. And you mustn't complain I exaggerate, because I'm not going to use my own words to defend myself, but someone else's, someone who is very trustworthy. For my own wisdom, then, and indeed I have some kind of wisdom, I will present as my witness the God of Delphi. Do you remember Caraphon? I'm sure you do. He was our childhood friend, yours and mine, a friend of the people. And you may recall how excessive Caraphon was in everything he was involved with. You remember. So, wouldn't you know it? On one of his visits to Delphi, he dared ask the oracle if there was anyone wiser than me. Pythia then answered that no one was wiser. True. Caraphon is dead, of course, poor man, but his brother is right there. And you can verify the truth of what I'm telling you. When I heard this, I thought, what is the God saying? And what does he mean by it? Because I know I'm not wise at all. So what is he saying? I'm wiser than anyone else. God doesn't lie, of course. Not possible. And for a long time afterwards, I wondered what he meant. Much later, I decided it was time to examine the God's words. And I did, in the manner I will describe to you now. Yes, I decided to visit a man from among those who are considered to be wise. Because that way, perhaps, I could put Pythia to the test and say to the God, hey, this man here is wiser than me. And yet you said, I'm wiser. With the process of examining this fellow in depth, no need to tell you his name, he was one of our politicians. And conversing with him, members of the jury, this is what happened to me. It became obvious that this man appeared to be wise to, those around him, and especially to himself. When in fact, he was not. So naturally I tried to prove to him that even though he thought he was wise, he really wasn't. The result was that he and many of those present at our, discussion ended up thoroughly despising me. As I was leaving, I thought, I am wiser than this man, because obviously neither one of us knows anything important. But he thinks he does. But he really doesn't. Why, I certainly don't know anything. But at least I don't think that I do. Yes. Well, afterwards I went to someone else, another politician. A man considered to be even wiser than the first one. And I realized he had the same problem. And he ended up despising me too. And so did many others like him. But I kept trying, you see, even though I knew I was getting obnoxious. It just seemed to me necessary to investigate the God's words. So I felt I should cover everybody who, was supposed to know something. Well, let me tell you, this is what I found out. The more respectable the man, the less he seemed to know. The less famous the man, the more sensible he was. Figure that. Anyway, after the politicians, I decided to go to the poets, hoping with them at least to find myself less knowledgeable. Yes. Well, I would bring along some of their best poems, comedies, tragedies, dithyrambs, that kind of stuff. And I would ask them what they were about. So I would also learn something while we were at it. I'm ashamed to tell you what happened, but I have to. In a nutshell, most of the bystanders could explain these poems better than the poets themselves. And then it dawned on me, poets don't write from wisdom, but from some sort of natural gift, some kind of inspiration, like that of soothsayers and oracles, who say a lot of things, and very good things, but never really know what they're talking about. I think the same thing has happened to the poets. Because of their creative talent, they think they're better than the rest, when in fact, they're not. So I left the poets too, realizing I had the same advantage with them that I had with the politicians. Finally, I went to the craftsmen. Yes, well, I was sure they, at least, know a lot of good things. And I was right. They knew what I didn't. And in that, they were my enemies. But my friends, they proved to have the same shortcoming as the poets. Because they were, wise craftsmen. They thought they were wise in everything else, too. And that fault spoiled whatever wisdom they had in the first place. It seems to me that members of the jury, that in the final analysis, only the God is wise. And that's precisely what the oracle meant. Human wisdom is of little value, even of no value at all. Maybe the God singled me out and used my name as an example, as if he wanted to say, Athenians, the wisest one among you is he who, like Socrates, knows that in reality is not wise. So, sticking to the words of the God, even to this day, I keep mulling over them, examining them, putting them to the test whenever I suspect that someone might be wise, whether it's a fellow citizen or a foreigner. if I get the sense that he isn't wise, I help the God and him by proving that he's not. Busy as I am with this kind of work, I have no time to do anything worthwhile, either for the city or for my family. I'm thinking my wife, actually helping the God all the time, I've become as poor as a beggar. Yes. And if this was not enough, all the young men, who willingly follow me, they love the way I examine people, and often they imitate me. Yes. They seem to find quite a lot of men who think they know something, when in fact they know very little or nothing. The problem is that those that are being examined, they get mad at me instead of the other ones. They actually claim there's a wretched man out there named Socrates who corrupts our young. And when someone asks them, what does he teach, this Socrates? What does he say to achieve such corruption? There's nothing to say, because they don't know. But being as they are, ambitious and fanatical and many, and talking as they do all at the same time, they have filled your ears with wild stories about me. They're slandering me. Then, and now, that's the ilk of my new attackers too. Managers of them, and editors, and Lycon, yes. Managers speaking for the poets, he's a poet, the young gentleman. And editors for the politicians and the craftsmen. And Lycon for the orators who are outraged because I didn't let them write my speech. Members of the jury, I believe that the defense I have presented so far, which deals with the old indictments, should be adequate. Now, I will try to defend myself against the new charges brought by managers over there, by my more recent accusers. And since these are new accusers, let us listen to the new indictments. Yes. They are more or less as follows. Socrates is guilty of wrongdoing. Again, because he corrupts the young, and because he doesn't believe in the gods of the city, but rather in new demons. His sentence should be death. At a moment like this, one of you could say to me, Socrates, aren't you concerned that by doing such things, you're now in danger of dying? My answer would be, my friend, You are wrong. You are wrong if you think that anyone who intends to benefit others should worry whether he is in danger of dying or not. The only thing on his mind should be whether his actions are just or unjust, whether his behavior is that of a good or a bad man. It'd be unthinkable for me to worry about such dangers. If that were the case, yes, absolutely. You would be absolutely right for one to charge me in court that I don't believe in God, that I corrupt the young, that I am afraid of dying, that I think I'm wise, but in fact I'm not. Members of the jury, to be afraid of dying is no different than to think that you're wise when you're not. To think that you know the things that you don't. Who knows what death is anyway? No one knows whether death is the greatest thing for man or not. And yet almost everyone fears death as if we know full well it's the greatest evil. Isn't this the most shameful ignorance of all? To think that you know the things that you don't. I will never be guided by fear. And doing things I know are wrong. In order to accomplish things I don't know for sure they're right. So, my good friends, even if you let me go now, because you don't believe magnetism there. You said to me, Socrates, we don't believe magnetism, I will set you free. On one condition, that you shall refrain at all times from philosophizing and examining people. And if you're ever caught doing it again, die. If you free me on this condition, then I will say to you, my fellow citizens, I love you, I appreciate you, but I think I will obey the God and not you. And for as long as I breathe and am able to, I will continue philosophizing and counseling every single one of you. I will even reproach you every time we happen to meet, repeating the same thing I've always said. You, my friend, an Athenian, citizen of the greatest and most renowned of cities for its wisdom and power, is be ashamed to be interested only in money, how to make more of it. To be ashamed to care about glory and honor, and not to care about truth, prudence, your soul. And if anyone challenges me, saying he truly cares about these things, I promise I'm not going to let him go. I will question him. I will examine him. If I get the sense that he is not virtuous, even though he claims that he is, I will reprimand him for caring so little about what's important and so much about what is not important. I will do this no matter who I meet, young or old, fellow citizen or foreigner, or foreigner. Because that's what the God has ordered me to do. You must understand this once and for all. Huh? Because what? I'm convinced, you see. Up until now, there hasn't been a greater good for you and the city than this service I offer to the God. Because I wander about doing nothing other than persuading the young and the old among you not to care so passionately about your bodies and your money, but rather to care about your soul a little bit. How to make it better. I keep stressing that virtue is not acquired with money. But rather that money, and all material goods, public or private, are the result of virtue. If these words corrupt our young, then they are indeed dangerous. So you say, my good friends, whether you listen to attitudes of the devil or not, whether you set me free or not, I don't intend to change my ways, even if I have to die many times over. Bear in mind now that if you condemn me to death, and I am indeed who I say I am, you're not going to harm me as much as you're going to harm yourself. Relatives and managers can't harm me either. They don't have the power. But I don't believe that a good man can be harmed by a bad one. It should be clear then, shouldn't it, by now, that I'm not presently defending myself for my sake, but rather for yours. Because by convicting me, you'd be committing a sin in the eyes of God, being contemptuous of what He gave you. Come now. If you kill me, you'll never find another one like me. Appointed by the God to be always at the side of the city, which by way of its size, resembles a big, sluggish thoroughbred in need of a horsefly to wake it up. I think that's what the God has assigned me to do in this city. All day long to sting you awake, prod your mind, and wandering about endlessly to challenge and reproach every single one of you. Separately. In view of all this we've been talking about, you may think it bizarre that I don't like to speak publicly, lecturing to crowds, giving advice to the city. Though I certainly am pretty young, I'm talking about all sorts of things. Counseling you privately. The reason for this is the same one you've heard me refer to often in many places. There is something inside me, something divine, godlike almost, in a voice I've been hearing ever since I was a child. This voice always keeps me from doing something I'm about to do. But it never pushes me into doing anything. It is this voice that prevents me from getting involved with politics. And I think it's good that it does. Rest assured, members of the jury, had I attempted to dabble in politics, I would have vanished long time ago. I would have been very good to you or to myself. Yes. Don't be angry with me. I can hear you. For saying this, it's true. There is no man that can be saved by you or by any other crowd if he speaks openly against anything in the city that is unlawful or unjust. If a man fighting for justice needs to survive, even for a while, he must remain a private citizen, not participate in public life. I held office in this city only once, when I served as a congressman, because my tribe was presiding. It was at the time, remember, when you brought to trial the 10 generals that failed to pick up the survivors after the naval battle of Argilos, and you wanted to try them all together instead of one at a time, as the law required. And I was the only one that voted against it. Remember? Oh, the orators wanted to arrest me, prosecute me, but I held to the law and what was just. Not afraid I would be killed. And this was at a time of democracy, no less. Yes, but even at the time of oligarchy, do you remember when the 30 sent me and some others to fetch Leon from his home in Salamis so that he could be... I refused to do it. I went home. I knew they wanted to implicate as many people as possible in their crimes. And I knew they would have killed me. They would have killed me for my action, had they not fallen from power shortly afterwards. Do you actually believe I would have reached this age had I been busy with politics? Paying more attention to it than anything else, while I pushed for justice at the same time? No, members of the jury, never! I have never sought to change justice for anyone, especially not for those slanderers. Some of them I even claiming to have been my students. Besides, I've never been anybody's teacher. I simply don't turn away anyone who is willing to listen to me talk. And if I corrupt any of our young people this way, or have corrupted a number of them already, don't you think that some of them at least, now that they're grown men and realize I gave them bad advice when they were, young, don't you think they should now come to the podium, indict me, ask for my punishment? If they're not willing to do this, maybe some of their relatives are, their fathers, their brothers. Come. If I have harmed their kin in any way, please let them remember it now. Punish me. Many of them are present here. First and foremost, my dear friend, Plato. Plato father. We're the same age, huh? Grew up in the same neighborhood. Plato is here too. There's Licinius from Spitia. His father. Yeah. Altifonius, yes? From Tifisia. Pyramus' father. Ah. There are many here whose brothers used to spend time with me. There's Paralos, Theaeus' brother. Where did I saw him? Athens, right here. Whose brother is my good friend Plato. And Apollodorus, Apollodorus' brother. I've said enough. I've said what I had to say in my defense. It's possible, of course. One of you facing a trial of less consequence could be very upset with the way I conduct myself here. You see, he would probably bring his children and his relatives and friends to the podium, and with tearful eyes, he'll beg the judges, please take pity on him. I don't do that. Even though I face the greater danger. Huh? Homer's saying holds true for me too, you know. I wasn't born of an oak tree, but of some rock, but of people, he says. So was I, my friends. So I too have relatives and sons. 3 of them. Yeah, the one is already an adolescent. The other 2 are still in childhood. They're still children. You don't see me bringing any of them up here, huh? To get you to acquit me. Well, why is it I don't do that? It's not out of arrogance, my friend, or because I want to embarrass you. That I'm facing death courageously is another matter. But for the sake of our reputation, mine, yours, the city's, I don't think it's appropriate to behave like that. Nothing is appropriate to a person my age, and right up, and with a name I heard, whether valid or not. Truly, my friend, truly. I have often seen people who normally, appear noble and grand. When brought to trial, they start acting like fools, as if they thought it wrong to be tried and punished for their wrongdoing. So what do? They start begging the judges. They start bribing the judges. I think people like that are a disgrace to our city. They could make a foreigner suspect that those Athenians who are distinguished for their virtue and are chosen by their fellow citizens for high office and distinction, they're ultimately no different than their lackeys. My friends, I repeat, those of us who have a certain reputation mustn't act this way. But even if we did, you should not allow it. On the contrary, you should decidedly vote against anyone who plays these miserable games in your presence. ridiculing our city, and vote for the one who behaves with some kind of dignity. You know, reputation aside, though, I just don't think it's right for one to plead with a judge, and by pleading with him, to be acquitted. I think acquittal should be the result of explaining, convincing the judge that one is innocent. The judge is not there to bestow justice as a favor. He is there to adjudicate. He's taken an oath not to grant favors to whoever he likes, but to judge according to the law. We mustn't therefore push you to perjury. But you mustn't get accustomed to it either. Because then none of us will be behaving according to the will of the gods. So, my good friends, please don't expect from me to behave toward you in any way that is not just, right, likable to the gods. Especially now that I'm being accused by this man over there for blasphemy. It is clear to me that were I to convince you by pleading with you, I would be making you break your oath. It would be as if I taught you not to believe in the gods. Defending myself this way, I would look as if I don't believe in the gods. Nothing could be further from the truth. Because I believe, members of the jury, I believe deeper than any of my accusers. And so, I leave it up to you and to the God to decide what's best for me and for you. Members of the jury, I'm not angry with your guilty verdict for many reasons, but mainly because I expected it. What I didn't expect, though, was the large number of votes on both sides. Really didn't think I'd be convicted by such a small majority. If 30 more votes had been cast in my favor out of the 500, I would have been acquitted. So, Anytus proposes I should be condemned to death. Fine. What should I counter? Propose then, members of the jury, as is the law and custom, presumably what I deserve. What might that be? What should I suffer? What sentence might you impose on me? Because I judged that I should withdraw from a normal life, neglect all those things that most people care for, like money, high office, public speaking, all the rest of titles, political alliances, factions. What must I endure? Because in the belief that, I could do something better than to just secure myself. I didn't seek all those things. But instead, by coming to each and every one of you, I granted you, in my opinion, of course, the greatest benefit of all. I approached every single one of you and counseled you to first take care of yourselves before anything else. How to become better and wiser. You become better and wiser before you judge and condemn anyone else. How to take care, not of the affairs of the city, but of the city. The city itself. What do I deserve then for being who I am? Something good, of course, members of the jury, if I should be honored according to my worth. It should also be something appropriate for me to use, What would be appropriate for a poor man? It will be good to you. The needs plenty of free time to keep nudging you on. Nothing less than free meals for life at the Princeton, the people's hall. A plate of food every day. Yes. I deserve this privilege more than the Olympic champion does, who is the one with 2 or 4 horses. I don't know, he might make you happy with his victory, but I make you happy with your own. Besides, he doesn't need others to feed him. I do. Yes, I know, it's plainly very hard, isn't it, to refute such slanders in the short time allotted here tonight. Being certain I have never wronged anyone, I don't intend to wrong myself either. I'm not about to speak against myself. Say I deserve to suffer something bad, proposing some sort of lesser punishment. And what do I have to fear? What do I have to fear? What Melitus is proposing over there? Which I don't even know if it's a good or a bad thing. Should I really choose things I know are bad and suggest them instead of that? Should I propose exile? Yes, maybe it'd be amenable to sentencing me to exile. Saying to me, Socrates, well, let's just get out of here, go live someplace quiet, keep your famous mouth shut. You know, this could be a little hard to explain to some of you. Because if I told you that by doing this, I will be disobeying the God. And it would be for this reason only that I cannot live a quiet life. You wouldn't believe me. You would think I was making fun of you. I want to also tell you that it's the greatest thing for a human being to talk about virtue every day. And about all the other things that you hear me mention when I look at myself and others. And that the unexamined life is not worth living. You believe me even less. And yet it is as I tell you, my friends. I know it's hard to convince you. Yes, at any rate, I never thought of myself as deserving any punishment. Yes. Well, you know, if I had some money, of course, I suppose I could pay you an amount I can afford, as is the custom. Yeah, that would not hurt me. No. Problem, of course, is I don't have it. If you still want to impose a fine, I can afford. Perhaps I could pay you 1 mina, 100 drachmas. That's all I have. That's what I propose to pay them. 1 mina. Right? Right? Members of the jury, Crichton here and Plato and Critobulus are urging me to propose how much? 30 mina, 3,000 francs. What price of justice? One track mine. And what? No, Plato says here they will vouch for it. Well, it's excessive, but within the law. So then, I propose that amount. And these trustworthy people will guarantee it. To price justice later. Most esteemed members of the jury, I now be patient a little longer. will now carry forever the stigma that you executed Socrates, a wise man. Because those that want to badmouth you will say, I'm wise, even if I'm not. Had you waited a tiny bit longer, this whole thing would have happened by itself. My age, I'm far closer to death than to life. I'm not addressing all of you, mind you. Just those of you who sentenced me to death. And I have this to say to them. You may think, Athenians, that I was found guilty because I could not find the right words to convince you, since supposedly I should have done everything in my power to avoid the sentence. Nothing could be further from the truth. I was condemned because I was not insolent and impudent. Because I didn't want to tell you things you would have heard gladly. I didn't want to cry and wail and do or say things unworthy of me, like what we used to be hearing from others. But neither then did I believe that because of the danger I was in, I should act in a way inappropriate for a free man. Nor do I now regret the way I defended myself. I prefer to die, you see, than there any other way. Because neither in trial, nor in war, nor any other occasion should I, or anyone else, ever scheme to avoid death through all means possible. Even in battle, one can avoid death by dropping his weapons, pleading with his enemy for mercy. There are many ways to avoid death if one has the gall to use them. My dear friends, that's not what's difficult. What's really difficult is to avoid evil, because evil runs faster than death. Again, to those of you who sentenced me, I would like to offer a prophecy, if I may, for your future. I say then to you that after my death you will be punished much worse than you punished me by killing me. Because if you think that by killing your critics you will avoid being censored for your ways, you think wrong. This method of elimination is neither good nor effective. There will be many others after me, like me, and they will be much harsher. The better, easier way is to allow others to criticize you. To criticize you. So you can learn from them. Grow in virtue. For telling these things to those of you who sentenced me, I bid you farewell. Now, those of you who acquitted me, I'd like to talk with you a moment. While the archons are, busy with the formalities. until I go to the place where I, you know. So my good friends, please stay with me a little longer. I will try to explain to you the meaning of what has happened to me today. My good friends, something miraculous has happened to me today. You know, my usual clairvoyance, my spirit, used to appear quite often in the past and prevent me from doing the smallest thing if I was about to do something. Now, neither this morning did the God's sign prevent me from leaving my house, nor did it stop me on the way here to court, or at any time to any defense. In the past, it used to stop me right in the middle of a sentence. Now, however, it did not prevent me from doing. Why? I'll tell you. It seems that what has happened to me today is for the best. It isn't bad, as some of you think, for one to die. Because you see, death is only one of two things. Either it is nothing, and whoever dies has no awareness, or, as they say, there's a change in course, and the soul migrates from this place to another. Now, if there's no awareness, and it's all like sleep, a dream, what a wonderful benefit it must be. Because then, all eternity would seem to last no longer than the night. Now, if on the other hand, death is like a journey to another place, and it's true what they say, that all those who have died have gone there. What greater good than this? If someone, having rid himself of all those here who claim to be judges, upon reaching Hades, could find out the real judges that supposedly hold there, like Minos, Radamanthus, Aeolus, Greek toil, and all those demigods who lived in just enough. Such a departure is bad. Who among you would give anything to be in the company of Orpheus, Museus, Hesiod, Homer? Gladly died many times over if this was true. Oh, I think all this would be quite pleasant. And most pleasant of all, to be able to do what I do here. Examine and explore who among them is wise and who thinks he is. But among them to be able to examine the one who led the great armies against Troy. Examine Agamemnon, Odysseus, Sisyphus, more. Thousands of others one can think of. Men, women, to be with them, to talk with them, to question them. Wouldn't this be just indescribable happiness? You too, my fellow citizens, you too, you should look at death with hope. Understand, there's only one truth. Good man suffers no evil in life or in death. The gods never neglect his affairs. Whatever happened to me just now didn't happen by accident. But it's obvious that for me to die now, rid myself of all these burdens, is the best thing. That's why I hold no malice toward my accusers and those of you who wrote judgment against me. Oh yes, right. It seems it is time for us to go. I, to my death, you, and your lives. Which one of us is going to the better place? No one knows. Except the God. Socrates thanks you. My wife thanks you. Socrates is mine. Oh my goodness. What a wonderful, intelligent, funny audience you are. Fantastic, thank you. As you know, there will be an esteemed panel that will discuss things with you for a brief time. And while they're being set up, if I may, which chair we will give something. If I may, while they're being set up, to thank the Seeger Center for Living Studies for this absurd idea and the philosophy department and classics and the Being Human Festival of the Humanities Council and the Protergatas, the chief engineers, Alexandros Nehamas and Dimitris Vondikas. Where is he? There he is. I haven't seen you since you were just 5 or 6 years younger than me at Athens College. Look at you now. And of course, the Andromata Foundation for funding this. Andre, thank you so very much. A Princetonian, no less. And if I may, since they're here, is this Nico? My goodness, I haven't seen him in 40 years. Nikos Monogios and Natalie, supporters of our work for many years, and I'm very grateful on behalf of it. And another good person, Miss Mary Beth Kelly, who also has, for many years, been supportive of our work. And of course, the wonderful Sarah Brooks and Eleni Vanis for taking care of all the logistics. And Eliana up there, who ran the show tonight, a young student, and I am very proud of her. And one more person, another Princetonian. Actually, I found out that she was Alexander's graduate student, our eminent dramaturg. Professor Sarah Monson, Classics and Political Science, Northwestern, the dramaturg of EllinikoTheatro, whose exegesis is in your program. Esteemed panel.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for attending. Yannis has already thanked all the people who have been responsible and the institutions who have been responsible. I'd just like to repeat our thanks to the Andromata Foundation and to welcome everyone here on behalf of the Seeger Center for Living Studies, which is in the process of celebrating its 40th anniversary, and hoping we will see you often again in the various events that we are planning. Mr. Vondikas here has extraordinarily complex plans. And what we'll do is, we have two calls. My name is Alexander Nehamas. This is Ben Morrison and Hendrik Lawrence, both colleagues of ours in the philosophy department. Melissa Lane was also going to participate, but unfortunately for reasons she couldn't help, she couldn't be here with us this afternoon. We don't want to talk very long. In fact, we want to talk very And maybe the questions come from the audience, but if you have a couple of comments that you'd like to make to get the conversation going, I would just mention that I was extraordinarily interested in the fact that the presentation lacked the deeply unfortunate solemnity that we usually associate with ancient people. Because they write in a language that's difficult and that we don't always understand, they themselves didn't think as clearly as we do. Well, if they did, they wouldn't write this way. They would write in a different way, and everything's white, right? The paint has come off, so everything's white and simple, and the Greeks are this rather monolithic kind of civilization. I think what Yannis Simonides did tonight is to bring Athens alive and to bring a very specific Athenian character alive in a way that I think Plato describes him much more often than we generally think. I think Plato knows that Socrates was a funny character in every sense of the word funny. And I think Yannis has shown us many of those ways tonight. So thank you very much, Yannis. And I leave the floor to my colleagues.
Well, just to echo some of the things that Alexander has said, one of the things that really struck me the most is that, when you read Plato, when you read Aristotle, you're reading two very different authors, two very different types of philosophy. Aristotle is designed to be read. Plato, it's not so clear. It's dialogue. It's designed to be heard. It's designed to be felt as a living contribution to a discussion. And that's what's really extraordinary about hearing Plato's words come alive on the stage, just presumably in the way he must have intended. I mean, hearing you do it is thrilling. It's like being with Socrates. It is being with Socrates, and it's leaping off the page in a way which I've never seen before. I mean, I've read this text I don't know how many times. I've never lived this text, and that's what's just happened.
The big dramatization, so Rossellini made a film about it. It is dreadful. Because I was standing there just reciting the Greek as if we were reading Bryce.
Thank you. I have an observation about Socrates' defiance, which is something that sort of leaps off the page of the book. But it seemed to me that in the dramatic performance that you gave us, which I thought was absolutely wonderful, there's an element of reasonableness and sort of softness in the performance that isn't so easy to see when you read the book, but that really became vivid to me as I saw the performance. I'm talking about the moment when you, Socrates, mentions Socrates' sons, and Socrates mentions the fact that two of the sons are children. And of course, the idea is, and this is the idea that's emphasized, that he's not going to bring the children on the stage, he's not going to beg, he's not going to plead. On the other hand, it seems to me reasonable for Socrates in the position that he is to call attention to the fact that he has two young children, which is exactly what he does. So he's actually not as defiant as you might think he is. He does mention the fact that he has two young sons. I like very much the way you pointed at the audience, suggesting the idea that the children might be present as possible. But even if they're not present, they can be imagined. People who hear him speak about his children can imagine them. And so merely mentioning them and somehow bringing them to people's imagination seems to me to be really an excellent middle path between not mentioning them at all and sort of being really defined in the way it often is perceived as having been. And on the other hand, sort of putting them on the stage, staging some kind of theatrical performance. So maybe he wasn't as defiant as he's normally perceived as being, and you've called our attention to that possibility. So thank you.
There's a lot of research and obviously and 15 years of performing this all over the world has been an extraordinarily learning process. But now I lost my train of thought. Yes, But aside from the research, an actor has to make choices that work on stage and work for him as opposed to someone else. So on the basis of what we read and the basis of studying the script and to my delight and my colleagues finding the humor and the irony and all the naughtiness that aside from the wisdom and everything else that is in it, you take that information and then you try to find ways that resonate within the actor and makes him or her empowers the actor to be able to bring it to the audience, share it. So I have to say that a lot of what we did and what you saw is a choice. It's not necessarily what I think or my colleagues think that's how exactly he was. Actually, you may have noticed, and I would be very interested after I say what I'm going to say to see if anyone caught it. I'm not playing Socrates. We bring Socrates on stage in his likeness, speaking his language, and place him at a point of reference and reverence. And then that frees the actor, who can be just the actor or a diachronic man, or simply Simonides. Freed me to not to fall into the traps of the roly-poly and all the Aristophatic and all that, but rather to, through my own sense of humor, through my own imagination, through my own instruments, through my own cosmology, to convey the passion, the humor, the wisdom, the whatever, the energy, but not mimic what we think. And that to us was very freeing. Did anyone make that observation or connection? Perhaps it didn't matter. Good.
Happened.
Good. It doesn't matter ultimately, but I wanted to share that with you. That was behind our work quite a lot.
Floor is open. I'm not quite sure I can see. Yes, please, in the back.
In reading the notes in the handout, I think I saw the word arrogance, and I'm hearing the word defiance. And as I was listening to it, I thought, this is a very reasonable man, and he's really performing or expressing to thine own self be true, with a little bit of mockery, with a little bit of irony, but there's an essential verity to him, to what he's saying. He's a very principled man, and he's adhering to that principle. So I found it very coherent and very credible.
Yeah.
And not arrogant.
How would you have voted?
To acquit. That he should continue nudging people and asking questions and counseling and so forth.
Rachel Bonami is another colleague of ours. She originally wanted to be just an active member of the audience. She then very generously offered to join us, but then we have organized it. So please, Rachel, be an active member of the audience.
I'm going to change my mind again. I did have one small question, because I think I did follow what you did with the mask, but I didn't understand the sound effect. What's that sound effect?
You didn't understand it?
The sound effect. Is that
the sound effect.
Is it mine?
We used to have 22 tracks, and I reduced them because I found them, as we were doing this, slowly they were reduced to 18, and then 15, and then now down to 7. The idea was, because this is theater, is not a lecture or a philosophical diatribe. So some of those, we used to, when we started, have a live percussionist. The wonderful Karen was with us. But then as we started touring, it became very difficult to have the instruments and her, etc. So we recorded. And they are intended, some of them, to connote crowd response, which is dragon teeth and all sorts of seashells, etc. You know, wonderful sound. The whispering of the crowd. What is he doing? That kind of thing. The gongs, of course, was the only thing that we could do in a solo piece to connote guilty and to die, and I think that perhaps was a bit obvious. I hope they didn't interfere. They just didn't understand, or did they bother you?
I was referring specifically to the sound when you're taking the mask off. I was wondering if there was some very specific thought there, or if it was just to match.
I want to experience it as the crowd.
Right.
You know.
Can I have a follow-up?
Mostly disapproval of the crowd. Yes.
Just more generally, are there, you said you've been doing this for 15 years, are there decisions that you change your mind about? Are there aspects that you do very different ways on very different occasions? Because I have to say, all your choices seem inevitable.
That's very kind of you. But you may not believe it, but if I were to tell you that all 486, this is 486th performance, are slightly different, because the audiences are different, and the cultures are different. Doing it here, and at Yale, and Oxford, or University of Athens, or the Athens Festival, or whatever, or a school of 400 Muslim kids in the ghetto of London, or Detroit, or Uruguay, or Saudi Arabia, or an audience of Maori in New Zealand. Because this is a dialogue, and I want never to do something that is by rote. There are certain things that I'm prepared for, but it is adapted to the particular voice that I hear back. And I don't think it would have been done any other way. I would feel completely irresponsible if I did it on automatic pilot. Something works, therefore I will keep it.
And can I ask, what's the most different from this that you've done?
Tonight?
Yeah, what's the most different version from the version that we just experienced?
Young children, because we've done it even with some middle school. Unbelievable, but 12, 13, 11, 12, 13, 14. I have to bring them in. And it's much funnier. It's much funnier because they will, you know, and I get them, and they get it, and self-deprecating, quite a lot of, oh, nah, you know, and they appreciate that because they don't like adults being wise and telling them what is true, and seeing someone that is an icon undercut himself and deal with himself with humor and down and out farce and joke. It makes them okay. That's a person I can dig and I can listen to.
It's almost more remarkable than having to do it 15 years because I've been watching it for 12. One of the reasons I do it, I think the Aristophanes Ars Moriendi of it prepares me for my latest diagnosis and questions perhaps. But nonetheless, I find that there has been an arc. I found that in your initial performances, the possibility of a transcendental world that would reward you was stronger. I see it more now in a kind of Diogenes or Sinope situation. If you're going to live like begging and asking questions and giving free lectures. It's good to practice with statues. I mean, I see it more sort of this performance I thought was more wildly dark, more Epicurean. It's probably just a dreamless sleep. I don't know how you sort of play that back and forth with each individual audience. Obviously, maybe at a Southern Baptist conference, you probably maybe if you're with a group of Marxists in Dubai, it's more in the darkness. But I found it more hectic, more dialogic. This is not the Socrates of the Hellenistic perfect forms, the mouthpiece for justice. This is a confused individual who's just trying to be true to himself with very little support.
That's terrific.
Well, but I noticed that at the beginning it was more balanced. You used to talk about the other world as a distinct possibility. Here there was something in your eye like, this is probably and here I think you take the Delphic thing with a certain degree of irony too. I don't really know what she means by saying it. Whereas in earlier performances, I've got this. I've gotten this messenger. And that, I didn't notice that in this performance at all.
Interesting. We have to have more of this conversation.
But then, you people don't have the benefit of having seen it for 12 years, so.
And Sarah, do you agree, it seems? Sarah has seen it from God knows.
Well, I think that the most striking thing is the removal of the melodicy.
Oh, yes.
In the actual text.
Yes, I used to have melodies on stage, and that was enjoyable, and putting down, etc. But slowly, I found out for myself, that is, that he just bamboozles him and uses not very credible arguments, but Levinas is not the smartest man, so, you know. But I found that it is much better to shorten it, to get rid of that scene, because it was funny to play both characters without making, you know, stupid, etc. But it weighed down on the piece, and I thought 75 minutes, you know, that's fine, because we want to have a discussion afterwards, and I just thought that for economy and specificity, I would get rid of it. Because there's a whole scene where Meletus comes on stage, Socrates grills him, proves him stupid, and his arguments, and gets rid of him. I just took the liberty, and I took a few elements from that scene, incorporated it without it being too obvious, and you know, dealt with the issues of corrupting the youth and the gods.
I think one of the reasons it works so nicely without it,
It works.
is that it's more, what you said before in your comments about the placing the mask on stage so that Socrates is present, but that you don't have to be a mimic. That scene, if you remember, when we would talk about it, that scene required you to be a mimic of sort. Because we had to find a way to impersonate Meletus and that stuff. So there was always that kind of issue that you were dealing with. And without it, I think you achieve that diachronic man that you called yourself, that you just referred to yourself as, I think more fully.
I'm much more comfortable, and even though I'm always terrified, as you know, before I start this thing every time, but I'm much more comfortable with it. Yes.
Sorry.
Just, I have a sort of follow-up question.
So nice to cry and play on stage.
Nice to be Plato. A follow-up question. What is it helping? A follow-up question to Rachel's last follow-up question. Did you sometimes get hostile audiences? Did you sometimes feel some kind of hostility from the audience?
The most hostile audiences are Greeks. What I do it in Greek, because we're doing it in Greek and in English, and 10 other languages with Socrates. Because they wanted to be you know, they come afterwards. First of all, I have people walking out, checking their program, getting up in front of me, going, and walking off. And they get, afterwards they tell me, how dare you, you know, make fun of him. I say, I don't make fun of him, I have fun with him. It's not the same thing. No, this is blasphemous.
Yes, please.
So I must say I'm a bit torn. From the one side, I'm very fascinated by your performance. I'm Greek. I'm fascinated.
Okay, I didn't say what I said before.
Fascinated by your performance. The art you presented is really one of the best, I must say. I'm going to ask you a question, and this became also apparent from what you said. Socrates had a disdain to the political life of the city. This is very un-Athenian, because the polis was an invention of the Athenians in the political life. So it is very much engaged with Pericles said that if you do not participate in the political life, you are achristos, achrios. So from this perspective, Socrates was an achrios, because he just was a private man. So what is the message you are conveying here? This is in a time where political participation is very difficult to get. Are you conveying the message that really not participating politically, because this is the virtue of Socrates. This is the virtue. So this is where I'm talking.
I'm going to pass the baton. I'm not avoiding this, but I think it's an important question, and I thank you. And you forgot to mention that there's another term, which is idiotis.
Private, yes.
Idiot.
Yes.
Anyone with idiotis is a private person, a person that only cares about his or her own affairs, and it has come to our time, the idiot.
Yeah.
You know, because you're an idiot if you don't participate in public life. So it is something that I had problematized me quite a lot, and I think I have found some balance in my head, but I would be very interested in hearing what you think about this paradox.
One thing that I thought came out in your performance was that when Socrates was using the word politician, you know, when you were spitting out this word politician, what it meant was not politician as it should be, but politician as it is, politicians at the type that they have around us. I mean, he, just like everyone, just like we might do now, you know, we look at the politicians that we have and we think that's not a real politician, that's not how it should be. And so you'll talk of improvement of the politicians and how they should learn from conversation and trying to make themselves better. I thought that actually conveyed the point that politics as it now is might be very problematic, politics as it should be maybe isn't so problematic.
Because as you remember him saying, you may think it bizarre that I don't like to speak publicly, lecturing to crowds, giving advice to the city. But rather, I prefer to, walk around, talking about all sorts of things, counseling you privately, one-on-one. So it's the difference. I think he believes what we all sort of know, that power corrupts. And absolute power corrupts absolutely, and he's concerned that anyone that really gives himself or herself over completely to the demands of a political life falls into traps that are deadly. And by him not being less political or being in the public, I mean, who was more public than Socrates? He was every day, morning until night. He was a terrible father, a terrible husband. He forgot to wash, smelled to high heaven, was always barefoot, and he was from morning until night in the marketplace. There, grabbing people by the scruff of their necks, say, sit down, I want to talk to you. You know, immigrants, foreigners, fishwives, slaves, Pericles, Aspasia, didn't matter.
That's what he said.
Right.
It's not what he does.
Okay.
He never talks to any of those people.
But he did in the Apollo.
may have, but what we have from Plato, who says that he talked to everybody, is no. He talked to famous people, like the sophists, and he talked to people who had some claim to know things like generals, and he talked to beautiful boys. Beautiful boys. Those are the three main audiences.
Beautiful rich boys.
And we have to be flexible.
Beautiful rich boys back there.
Well, you couldn't be beautiful if you weren't rich. As a matter of fact.
I will defend him from being an idiot because I think he has to write that line between being a citizen in the sense that he serves in Delos the same way he serves jury duty. He does his jury duty and he disagrees with the jury and he makes it known because he's following his own criteria. And the other way it was staged today was like if you go to the public life, you're going to be seduced, you're going to find status, you're going to find wealth, it's going to be fructose everywhere, and you'll lose what you're there for. So I think that it would be better to just use the word demagogue right away to sort of, undercut it because of what had been happening after the Peloponnesian War, etc. And sort of see, it is awful to say that the actual armature of the state is corrupting because they're apparatchiks or party members or demagogues, and you still are a citizen. You still did jury duty. You still fought at Delos. You're not
Still going to war.
and you are going to die to prove that you're loyal to the city and its laws. So
We also should keep in mind that it's not a university agreed at the time, but one conception of what politics is how to make the citizens virtuous. And that's what he's doing. So there's a sense in which, and he said it somewhere, that he's the only true politician in Athens, because he is concerned with what politics should really be concerned about. So there is that.
And I'm sure you all know, but political is a beautiful term in ancient Greek. It meant not just governing, but being within the interests. You keep the polis, you serve the polis. You're part of the fabric. Whether you're an artist or whether you are an orator, whatever you are, if you are involved in the life of it, privately, publicly, whatever, fully, you are political. Anything that has to do with the sustenance, maintenance, survival, growth of the state, of the city, is political.
I think it's time to thank Socrates and thank